You know the feeling. You are in a crowded grocery store or a park or a busy street, and you turn your back for 3 seconds. When you turn around, your child is gone. For a fraction of a second, your brain completely misfires. Your stomach drops. Your heart rate violently spikes. A pure, irrational panic floods your nervous system before you spot them standing 2 aisles over, completely fine, staring at a box of cereal. You feel that intense physiological reaction because you are running ancient hardware in a modern world. Your brain doesn't know what a grocery store is. Your brain thinks you are standing in a dense, freezing Pleistocene forest. And in that forest, if a 3-year-old wanders out of your line of sight for 3 seconds, they do not come back. Being a human child right now is relatively easy. Being an ancient human child was a mathematical nightmare. For most of human history, up to half of all children did not live to see their 15th birthday. They lived in a world without medicine, without walls, without maps, and without guaranteed food. But the real mystery isn't that ancient childhood was dangerous. The real mystery is how a species with babies this completely useless managed to survive at all. Look at a baby horse. Within an hour of being born, a foal can stand up. Within a few hours, it can run fast enough to keep up with the herd and evade predators. A baby gazelle can sprint the day it enters the world. Now look at a human infant. It cannot walk. It cannot see clearly for months. It cannot feed itself. It cannot regulate its own body temperature. And its primary defense mechanism against a world full of hungry apex predators is to scream at the top of its lungs. If you were designing a creature to survive the Ice Age, you would never build a human baby. It is a massive liability. So why are we like this? Evolutionary biologists point to a cruel biological trade-off called the obstetrical dilemma. Millions of years ago, our ancestors started walking upright on 2 legs. To do this efficiently, the human pelvis had to become narrower. But at the exact same time, we were developing massive, highly complex brains. A larger brain requires a larger skull. A narrower pelvis creates a smaller birth canal. The only way a human mother could survive giving birth to a large-brained baby was to deliver it early, essentially undercooked. Human babies are born neurologically premature compared to other primates. We are born helpless because if we stayed in the womb until we could walk, our heads would be too big for our mothers to survive the delivery. Our supreme intelligence cost us our early physical survival skills, which means the ancient human toddler was the most vulnerable creature on the planet. Imagine experiencing the world through their eyes. A toddler is a learning machine. They are hardwired to explore, to touch, to grab, and to put absolutely everything they find directly into their mouths. In a modern living room, that means they chew on a TV remote. In an ancient landscape, that instinct is a death sentence. Every single day was a lethal obstacle course. A colorful berry found on a low bush stops the heart. A curious stick on the ground turns out to be a venomous snake. The campfire, which provides the only source of warmth and safety, is also a mesmerizing, unpredictable force that can cause horrific burns if a child steps 1 inch too close. And then there is the dark. When the sun went down, the ancient world became an alien landscape. Humans have terrible night vision. Our predators did not. Leopards, cave bears, and dire wolves owned the night. For a child, the darkness wasn't just scary in an abstract way. It was a physical wall where monsters actually lived. If a child wandered past the glow of the firelight to chase a firefly or relieve themselves, the darkness could simply swallow them whole. So, how did any of them survive? How did you end up here? If survival relied entirely on one exhausted, starving mother trying to protect a noisy infant from a cave bear, the human race would have gone extinct. The secret weapon of human survival wasn't fire, and it wasn't the spear. It was the grandmother. Anthropologists call it alloparenting. Parenting by individuals other than the biological mother and father. Humans are one of the only species on Earth where females live decades past their reproductive years. For a long time, scientists didn't understand why. From a cold evolutionary standpoint, if you can no longer reproduce, why keep consuming resources? Because an ancient camp operated as a paranoid, highly coordinated, heavily armed daycare. While the younger adults were exhausted from hunting or foraging, grandmothers, aunts, and older siblings took over. A child was never put down. They were carried in slings, passed from hip to hip, constantly surrounded by a shield of vigilant eyes. The tribe shared the unbearable weight of keeping the child alive. The toddlers learned the rules of survival not through lectures, but through intense observation. They watched the adults. A modern child learns to look both ways before crossing a street. An ancient child learned to go dead, terrified silent the moment an elder stopped walking and stared intently into the tree line. They learned that when the adults froze, you freeze. But with death hovering over every single day, it is easy to assume that ancient childhood was just a grim, joyless march toward adulthood, that these kids were just miniature, traumatized adults. The evidence suggests something completely different. Deep inside the Tuc d'Audubert cave in France, researchers found something buried in the dark that breaks the illusion of constant misery. About 14,000 years ago, a group of ancient people ventured deep into this cave. Among the adult footprints, archaeologists found the tracks of children. But the children weren't just walking in a straight line. The footprints show they were running around. They were deliberately jumping into the soft clay. They were splashing in mud puddles. In other archaeological sites across Europe, we have found miniature, perfectly crafted hand axes and tiny wooden spears. They were too small to kill an animal. They weren't tools. They were toys. The adults, despite spending every waking hour fighting for their own survival, took the time to carve toys for their children. They played. Even surrounded by predators, even enduring harsh winters where the food ran out, children still possessed imagination. They still laughed. They still wrestled in the dirt and annoyed their older siblings. Trauma and danger might have been the baseline of their existence, but joy fiercely persisted. This reveals something profound about who we are. We tend to think of human evolution as a story of increasing strength. We mastered fire, we built weapons, we conquered the wild, but our greatest strength was actually born from our greatest weakness. Because our children were born so incredibly helpless, our ancestors had no choice but to rely on each other. If you didn't share your food, the baby died. If you didn't help watch your sister's child, the baby died. If you didn't stand between the dark woods and the campfire, the baby died. Our toddlers were so defenseless that they forced us to invent community. They forced our brains to develop complex communication so we could organize protection. They forced us to feel a deep, agonizing empathy for someone other than ourselves. Every time you feel that sudden spike of panic when you lose sight of your child, every time you instinctively reach out to catch a falling toddler you don't even know, you are echoing a survival mechanism that kept our ancestors alive against impossible odds. We didn't conquer the planet in spite of being utterly helpless. We conquered the planet because being helpless forced us to learn how to love each other enough to survive.